Welcome back. So one topic that comes up here and there on the channel via live streams is what would THG do if he ran the NHL? So I figured I'd put on an all-star jersey with the NHL logo on the front, and I'd wear my Doctor Strange cape, sort of, because I figure, we always hear about how Batman's a vampire and there's all this evil. So evil usually involves capes, and it's a nice cape, so why not? But I'll talk about 10 items NHL related and my honest opinion on this, and you guys can let me know your thoughts. I've done videos similar to this. I've been looking through the channel's videos, and I haven't seen anything recent that's along these lines. So yeah, 10 things. We'll start with goalie interference. There's been a lot of talk of this again. The interesting thing is that the GM meetings, the GMs were shown all these examples, and it sounded like, the NHL's got this all figured out. And now over the last week, everything's gone chaotic again. I've talked about this before. We'll talk about it again here. I think you simplify it. I do. I think there's too many times where it's, did he have time to reset, did this and that. I think if the contact occurs inside the crease, if the contact occurs outside the crease, that's the difference maker. When a goaltender's outside the crease and a player bumps into him, my opinion's honestly, both players are allowed that ice. So unless you're going to argue just interference is a normal interference penalty, and I think you can argue interference on a goaltender at times as well that doesn't get called. That the goalie just happens to come out and set a pick. But yeah, goalie interference to me would be black and white. It would be, is it inside the crease? Is it not? If it's inside the crease, there you go. Which I know there are people who wouldn't like that if that was the change, but to me, it's just, I would take out the gray area personally if I was in charge. Fines and suspensions, I would have complete transparency on the whole thing. I would also hope and work with Department of Player Safety on more descriptive stuff, more explanations. So, like, for instance, we always see people upset when there aren't suspensions or fines for things that happened the night before. I think having somebody in player safety put together a video saying, look, we didn't call anything on this one and this is why. And other examples of borderline that they didn't call. Just an explanation, just a quick, it could just be a 1-minute video or something along those lines. Or even, blog posts, that blogs still exist, right? That kind of thing, right? Just, hey, here's what we didn't, because otherwise you're going to have people, and people will still complain. But at least then you get some sort of an explanation for why what gets suspended and fined and why the items that don't. Expansion, my honest opinion, I would be lying if I said that when I had my own hockey league of my own creation way back in the day, I had 40 teams. I had a schedule where basically it was two 20-team leagues where the each side of the league didn't play against one another. It was easier for scheduling reasons to do it that way. And so these teams wouldn't see each other until the final. So for me to stand here and say, I'm against the NHL going past 32 would probably be untrue. Now, I know there's people who don't want to see expansion past 32 teams. I get the feeling it's going to happen. This is where the owners like having that extra money. And I think it is going to happen. And honestly, if I was in charge, I don't know that it'd be different. And I apologize to people that are going to be angry about that, but it's just, honestly. Length of overtime and shootout. I've never been a fan of the shootout. Anything that causes there to be less shootouts is good. So I would be fine with, now, going back to, same thing with the old expansion thing. When I had my own on paper and that kind of thing, where I was running my own thing, I had limitless overtime because they weren't real people. This wasn't real. And so I just had wins and losses, and it just looked so clean. Just wins and losses. It was like Major League Baseball. Just that's it. So ideally, that's where I would be, but I understand that these are human beings that are going to have to play again the next night. I think we'll see them go to 7 minutes. I would be in favor of a 7-minute overtime, just that extra couple of minutes, and hope that we avoid shootouts. If I had, like, absolute power over the National Hockey League, I don't know that I'd take shootouts out, because I think that there'd be some fans that have an opinion on that. It's been in the game now for about 20 years. I know it's not going anywhere, but I would try to limit the amount of shootouts we have in the NHL, just personally. The argument for a 3-2-1 point system, I mean, I would probably take that to the NHLPA. I would go to the Players Association, since they're the ones that are going to be playing these games, and say, how do you guys feel about this? I would do a lot of and this will come back in this video as well, I would do a lot of consulting with the NHLPA as well as the owners and the point system. I would basically talk to people and say, look, should we give this a shot? I'd want to keep it kind of simple. The PWHL does have a good setup when it comes to the point system, but it's a lot of columns. And when you have extra columns for, overtime, shootout win, shootout loss, overtime loss, it can get to be a lot. So right now I can say this team's 5-6-3, and you guys know what that means. But if I go, this team's 5-2-1-3, 2-6, you'd be like, is that good? I don't know. So that's where it gets tricky for me personally. Bring in a new system, but make sure that it reads well and that it's still simple for people to understand exactly what's on the line and who's got how many points and how. The entry draft. Bettman apparently isn't a fan of the idea of the entry draft being decentralized, even though I think teams want it to be that way because it limits, it cuts back on their expenses, having to fly everybody to a central location. I think we'll see the NHL entry draft go back to a big production next year, and it should. I think the NHL entry draft should be this big thing where everybody gets together. We had it in Vancouver. It was kind of a shame that I had the channel, and obviously with me having the channel and doing the live stream during the draft, it's a shame I couldn't have gone. It would have been a lot of fun. And I think the NHL should keep that. I think, if anything, I think the NHL should make it a big deal. Go to MSG in New York, make it this big thing. And maybe, in fact, have it where day 1 and day 2 get the same sort of presentation. Obviously, the day 2 draft picks are much, much faster. But, make it so that it's this really big deal and get more into all the weeds on these prospects. Bring more people in who are these, some of the guys who run the websites, like Elite Prospects and stuff. Bring them to the draft and have them on TV and have them talking about who they like and who they don't and all that. And really just make it this big deal. Because I feel like the draft is already kind of a big deal, but make it bigger. The All-Star Game, I don't know if I would continue to have it if I was in charge. I get the feeling that I would probably get rid of the All-Star Game as we know it. I would try to come up with some kind of an exhibition setup. Something where players are not going to be getting hurt. Teams aren't going to be worried about players getting hurt. Maybe something to do with international hockey, some kind of bragging rights kind of thing. And just make sure that there's stuff for the kids too, and all these, skills competitions for the kids. Because really the All-Star Game is for the kids. They're the ones that get excited about all the stars playing together and all that. It's not really for people in my age bracket. We'll put it that way. And I don't think there's any way to do that. Award voting has always kind of bothered me a bit. And I mean, I understand that journalists vote on it, but what if the NHLPA voted on that? So this again is where I'll go back to the NHLPA discussion of, what if players during the last week of the regular season, or that day in between the end of the regular season and the start of the postseason, all the players got a vote? What would be wrong with all of the players saying, we think this guy deserves the Norris? It would be interesting. It would lead to, I think we'd see different guys winning awards if all the players had a say in it. Obviously, players could abstain. Players would be like, nah, I'm going to Puerto Rico with the family. Sorry, or I'm headed off to Europe for a month, so not going to be able to vote that day, even though they could. They could just probably just a thing on their phone. But I think if you had the award voting with the players, and if you want to keep reporters being allowed to vote, sure, yeah. But I think having players with a vote, I think that would make a lot of sense. Because there are definitely writers that I don't necessarily trust their votes. Every year there's a head scratcher with the votes. And with players, we'd still get head scratchers, but it would be interesting to have the players saying, I voted for this guy because. And it could lead to a great conversation, right? And maybe we would see, with Norris Trophy in particular, maybe more consideration would be given to the defensive defensemen than is given to them now. Offside. The length of reviews, I've talked about this as well. I think that when it's so close, when it's less than an inch, or it's, he gets like almost half of a stride. Like there's half a stride is a lot. So you guys understand what I'm getting at. When it's really, really close and you're looking going, okay, in that frame, maybe offside. Maybe. Could be. Maybe. Okay, this angle shows maybe. No. I don't. Is it? Then they didn't get a big advantage. I don't think offside was brought into the National Hockey League with that in mind. Offside is meant to basically prevent a team cheating for offense. I've seen at times people saying, why don't we just get rid of offside? You'd have a lot less whistles if you got rid of offside. You'd probably have more chaos. And you'd have some upset coaches. Because you'd have players cherry picking. And the cherry picking would bother both the coach of the player who's doing the cherry picking as well as the coach of the team who's watching it happen. Going, well, now we got to stay back and cover that guy. But I know we'll never get rid of offside. I know that's never going to happen. And I wanted to end on this. Advertising gets discussed a lot when it comes to the National Hockey League. Gambling advertising, I think the National Hockey League should be proactive in terms of limiting how often the gambling advertising takes place, where those are placed, and keep in mind that there are very often a lot of younger viewers. And it's just one of those things that I feel like has been just shown to the kids, like, hey, here's a way to make quick money. And it doesn't work. If gambling sites were this generous that you can just go on there and pay $5 and win $100, then they wouldn't exist. They would not have the money for the advertising that they're giving you through the National Hockey League. They're able to do all of this advertising because they make a lot of money. And they know they're going to make a lot of money. And I'm not a fan. I know there are gambling ads that play alongside my videos. I understand that. I do not have any kind of agreement with any of them. I get emails all the time about, hey, partner with us, and nope, I won't do it. And I think the NHL should curb these. I'm not saying end them altogether. I'm not saying that. Just curb them a little bit. I think right now, yeah, it's one of those things that I'm concerned with, not just for now, but for the future as well. So in order to provide you with these 10 items and give you my explanation, I just felt like the cape gave it more gravitas and more of a serious tone. So there you go, more of a serious tone. I thought about wearing my captain's hat, but that's just too serious. That's too serious. At that point, people are like, hey, we're at DEF CON 2 or 6 or how many cons are there? Anyways, there you go. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Let me know if you were in charge of the National Hockey League for one day. Let's save one day in charge of the National Hockey League. What would you change? What would you bring back? And what would you get rid of? That kind of thing. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. This is actually kind of comfortable. Maybe I'll wear this in videos going forward. That wouldn't be weird at all, would it? All right. I will talk to you guys again soon.